What was supposed to be a routine flight from Barcelona to London took a sharp turn when a passenger made fun of Emily's ebony skin. The flight was halted due to the rapidly intensifying circumstances. It was unknown to both of them who the man behind them was. Emily stood next to her daughter Mia that day as they went through security checks. While their luggage was being examined, they were holding their tickets. After being approved, they went in the direction of the plane they were going to board with the other passengers. After traveling from Jamaica to Barcelona, Emily and Mia were getting ready to board a flight that would take them to London. Emily felt a sense of relief as they were about to arrive home after completing the first half of their excursion. After the poignant journey back to their Jamaican roots, she eagerly anticipated returning home to her cozy London apartment. Emily and Mia didn't voice any complaints despite having been given different seats on the aircraft. Mia was seated on the opposite side of the aisle, a few rows back from Emily's seat, which was on the aisle. Mia was comforted to know that she could easily reach her mother in an emergency, because she could see her from her seat. After taking a short flight of steps, they boarded the aircraft and found their designated seats. Emily packed her handbag and phone in the overhead compartment and left the rest of her stuff behind. A shadow passed across her as she was ready to fasten her seatbelt. When she looked up, she saw a man standing next to her, his face displaying a deep frown. With a snarl, he introduced himself as Oliver and told her to make room for him because his seat was by the window. Emily instantly agreed, even though she didn't understand his contemptuous expression. Emily let out a quiet gasp as she fell back down from her seat, her arthritis suddenly becoming more severe. Oliver's scowl became wider, and he gave her the order to move entirely aside. Feeling embarrassed, Emily apologized and attempted to stand once more, leaning on her armrest and the seat in front of her. She finally made room for him after what felt like an eternity. After mocking her effort, Oliver threw himself into his seat with fury. Oliver took a seat and started hurling insults at Emily. He detested being seated next to a woman of color and would verbally abuse her without cause. Emily's skin tone and Jamaican accent were her only transgressions. When she attempted to answer, Oliver called her names, got up on his feet, and told her to stop talking. Other passengers, including Mia, became aware of the altercation very soon. Mia rushed to her mother's side upon witnessing her grief. Oliver threatened to have Emily kicked off the plane as he carried on with his angry outburst. Mia confronted him and told him to stop being so mean to her mother. Oliver became even more enraged by her defiance. The two black ladies who dared to challenge him, Emily and Mia, seemed like a menace to him. Oliver scowled and said, "You're making a big mistake. I'll make sure you both regret this." The flight attendants became aware of the disturbance. One of them, Sophia, a tall, composed woman, walked up to the scene. Glancing between the anxious three, she questioned, "Is everything all right here?" "No, it's not." Oliver lost his cool. "These two are causing trouble." Sophia glanced at the clearly agitated Emily and Mia. Gently, she murmured, "Please come with me," and led the way to the front of the aircraft. With a stern attitude, she faced Oliver once more. "Sir, harassment or discrimination of any kind is not tolerated on our planes. We shall have to ask you to exit the aircraft if you don't stop acting in this manner." Anger heated Oliver's face, but he remained silent. By showing them to unoccupied seats in business class, Emily exhaled in relief as they took their new seats. Mia gave her mother a comforting grip on the hand. "We'll be back home soon, Mom," she murmured gently. The remainder of the flight was uneventful. Emily and Mia were among the first people to exit when they landed in London. Emily couldn't help but feel proud of herself as they strolled through the airport. She and Mia had stood up for each other and themselves in spite of the difficulties they had encountered. They were finally able to enjoy the luxury they had long craved back at their London home. Emily had a great sense of calm as she took in her old surroundings. They had endured a difficult and protracted journey together, emerging from it stronger and more resilient than before. Mia turned to face her mom as they finished unpacking. "I think it's time for us to tell our story, Mom. People must be made aware of what took place, and our resistance to that individual." With a determined expression, Emily gave a nod. "It's accurate, Mia. Our tale has the power to change things." They started writing after that in the hopes that others would be motivated by their story to confront bigotry and intolerance wherever they come across it. After all that Emily had already been through, she couldn't believe she was going through this again. Realizing that prejudice still existed in this day and age was devastating. This encounter reminded her of her early years as a young Jamaican immigrant living in London. She had been the object of so much hostility and hatred in the past. She had lost a lot of pals to bullies of color and trigger-happy police officers. She was going through a difficult time, but she had refused to give up. She overcame all of it and persevered in spite of the negative she had to deal with. Although it was difficult for Emily to find work, she didn't let it get to her. She persisted in her efforts to find work that would allow her to pay her expenses. She put forth a lot of work and rose through the ranks over time. She quickly fell in love with Rich, a fellow immigrant from Jamaica. Emily was happy to find someone she could settle down with because they had similar beginnings. They tied the knot, and their union was happy. They were deeply in love with one another and did everything in their power to make sure the other was comfortable and happy. Emily and Rich started working numerous jobs after having their children in order to make ends meet. It was difficult because it appeared that society was out to stop them from giving their kids a higher quality of living. The pair was unfazed, though. After putting in all the necessary effort, they were able to send all of their kids to college. Emily had worked so hard for years, and now that her financial burden had been removed, it was time for her to kick back and enjoy her retirement. Now that they were adults, the kids joyfully looked after their parents. They ensured that the health insurance was always current. The food were always stocked, and all payments were paid on schedule. Only Mia was able to see Emily and Rich on a regular basis because of their hectic work schedules, and she did so whenever she could. The children gave their parents airline tickets for trips every few months, so they may enjoy their golden years. For once, Emily and Rich could finally smile at life. They were living the good life, taking pleasure in their advanced years. Sadly, that's when things went wrong. Rich unexpectedly became ill, shocking everyone. They were unaware that the illness had been slowly developing in his body for years. Rich had never had a routine examination because his health had always been good. It was too late by the time the symptoms appeared. Emily was inconsolable as she saw her husband grow thinner every day and constantly feel sick. Ultimately, Rich passed away from the cold grip of death just a month after being admitted to the hospital. Since nothing the doctors tried seemed to be able to cure him, Emily was deeply shaken by his passing. Nothing was the same. She couldn't stand to spend the entire day by herself in the house, because everything made her think about Rich. Emily struggled for a long time to get herself together. She remained in one place in the home, staring out the windows non-stop, and eating only when she was dizzy. She didn't know what to do next, because life had become meaningless to her. After becoming aware of the threat, Mia and her siblings began paying Emily frequent visits, and ultimately brought her to Mia's house so that she wouldn't be left alone. As Rich's death anniversary drew near, Mia made the decision to bring Emily to Jamaica for the ceremony. Given that Emily and Rich were both from Jamaica, Mia thought the vacation would help her mother get better. She was accurate. Emily spent the whole journey with her paternal relatives, who had also lost Rich. Emily found it a little easier to bear because she was surrounded by family members who also experienced sadness. She was reminded with nostalgia of her early years and her time with Rich by the well-known sights, sounds, and scents of Jamaica. The trip to Jamaica was a healing journey as much as a memory trip. Emily re-established her ties to her family, chatted with them about her past, and took comfort in their love and support. She felt a sense of serenity, gradually, as the thick veil of mourning started to part. She was reminded by the journey of the tenacity and fortitude she had always possessed. Emily had a newfound feeling of purpose as they were getting ready to head back to London. Although she was aware that her life would never be the same without Rich, she also understood that she had to continue living since her children and grandkids depended on her. She knew she could make it through this too, since she had already survived so much. Emily returned to London and began her life afresh. The mother-daughter relationship strengthened as she continued to see Mia on a regular basis. They talked about their vacation to Jamaica frequently, and the recollections were happy and consoling. Emily's narrative served as a tribute to the resilience of the human spirit, the strength of love and family, and the value of keeping our roots in mind. Knowing that she was never alone, she will carry on facing hardship with bravery and dignity. It was a lovely time, full of warmth, humor, and healing. Emily even felt guilty about leaving sooner. She made a self-promise to herself to begin frequent visits. Emily and Mia made plans to travel to London shortly after their holiday ended. Their trip had started with a hitch-free flight to Barcelona, but everything went wrong on the way to London on the connecting flight, all Oliver's fault. The situation infuriated other passengers more and more, as Emily and Oliver traded angry comments. Oliver resisted their attempts to stop him, saying he didn't want Emily anywhere near him. He insisted that she be given a different seat, or perhaps kicked off the aircraft. It appeared like every effort to get him to quiet down simply made him more irate, and the flight attendant's presence did nothing to soothe him. Passengers started filming the situation on their phones all around him, but Oliver didn't care. Emily was threatened by him, saying he would force her out of the plane because she was being stubborn and wouldn't move. He was challenged to try by Emily and Mia, who warned him he would regret it the instant he touched either of them. Oliver's face reddened with hatred as his anger grew. As he was ready to get up from his seat, calling Emily an ugly old cow, a man in the seat behind him bellowed, "Stop." The man identified himself as Henry and threatened to do something that Oliver would live to regret if he didn't stop. Henry received a stern look from Oliver, who told him to shut up. Henry retorted, "Your behavior is ruining the trip for everyone. You are the reason this flight hasn't even taken off." Oliver ignored him and stood poised to execute his threat against Emily. Henry leaned in her direction, then sprang over the seat and threw his whole weight against Oliver. As they fell to the ground, each man collided with the rear of a different chair. In a swift motion, Emily sprang from her seat to avoid being struck, and Mia yanked her mother away without delay. Oliver cried out to be let go as they rolled once on the floor, Henry landing on top. But Henry pinned him down, stopping him from hurting anyone else. The audience got increasingly out of control, and the plane got rowdier. It was imperative for the flight attendant to resolve the chaos once and for all. Regretfully, the attendant didn't handle things well. Infuriating the other passengers, he moved Emily and Mia to a different seat, while putting Oliver back in his original location. It appeared as though Oliver was solely to blame for the punishment that Emily and her daughter were receiving. Still, the travelers kept quiet to keep the peace, since they wanted the journey to go on. A video of the whole thing was uploaded on Facebook. Just a few hours after the plane touched down in London, it quickly became viral. Henry, the traveler who had tackled Oliver, was a well-known influencer on a number of different platforms. In addition to criticizing the airline for their ineptitude and lack of professionalism, he described Oliver's nasty and racist actions in the video that he posted. People were incensed by the footage, and they boycotted the airline on all social media sites, and demanded to know why they permitted their patrons to be treated so badly. The airline, under tremendous pressure, sent a press release announcing that Oliver had been turned over to the police, and that they were cooperating with the authorities. They assured me that the right steps were being done, but the harm was already done. The reaction of the airline was perceived as merely damage control. and many individuals pledged to avoid the airline because they felt uneasy. A month or so after their return, Emily and Mia filed a lawsuit against Oliver. Their tenacity and will to pursue justice were demonstrated by the court struggle. As the case developed, it became a talking point for conversations about racism and prejudice, encouraging many people to speak out against injustice. In addition to providing Emily and Mia with justice, the lawsuit made clear that structural changes in the way airlines and society as a whole handle these kinds of situations are necessary. Although it was a difficult and protracted road, many others who were going through similar difficulties found hope in Emily and Mia's bravery and perseverance. They persisted in telling their tale and argued for a society in which everyone, regardless of skin color, is treated with respect and decency. All of the attorneys Oliver hired were unable to assist him. The films on the internet were devastating proof against him. In an attempt to tip the scales in his favor, he initially attempted to tell a falsehood, saying that Emily and her daughter had provoked him. But Emily was not alone, and neither was her daughter. Witnesses who had been on the fatal flight turned up and testified against Oliver. Because the tapes became viral, everyone was watching the case, and it appeared like the whole nation was against him. Everybody was waiting for the court to issue a fair decision. Oliver was ultimately hit with a hefty fine. For the insults he directed toward Emily and Mia, he was compelled to pay a sizable amount of money to each of them. The fine nearly broke him. It was that steep. Emily and her kid received more than just the money he provided them. In an effort to maintain its good name, the airline offered Emily and Mia complimentary tickets for a full year, as long as they were traveling inside the areas the airline served. It didn't matter where they were going. They publicly apologized to Emily and Mia for their handling of the issue in the beginning, and disclosed this at a press conference. Oliver's situation was not looking good in the interim. The airline permanently barred him. Unfortunately for him, this was hardly the worst of what had occurred. His narrative began to circulate across internet blogs and local TV stations, making him notorious in London. Since everyone was familiar with his face, they quickly located his place of employment and opposed it. Up until they were compelled to fire him, they boycotted the business both online and off. Nothing seemed to work for Oliver once he was dismissed. Employers would not touch him with the 10-foot rod because he had become so poisonous. He was afraid he would be recognized if he ventured too far from his home. He was obliged to take out loans in order to pay his expenses and exist because he had no money or work, but doing so just made his debt worse. His future was hopeless and empty, and the life he had known before boarding that trip from Barcelona was gone. Oliver became aware of the seriousness of his conduct at this time. Because he felt he belonged to a superior race and could say and do anything he pleased, he had made snap judgments about others based only on the color of their skin. That had been the downfall of his life. He wanted so much now that he could go back in time to that very moment and undo everything he'd said to Mia and Emily. For such a chance, he would stop at nothing. Emily and Mia carried on sharing a home in the interim. Their appreciation for life was only increased by everything that had transpired. Emily understood that continuing to live was what her beloved husband would have wanted for her. So she was able to finally move over the agony of losing Rich. Mother and daughter had a happy, long life together. What a heartwarming tale. Who knew that in the end, Oliver would receive what he deserved? In Emily's situation, how would you have responded? Tell us in the comments section below. Make sure you click the subscribe and like buttons. Until the next video, see ya. The Remembering.